Hey guys, today I want to show you my own personal top 10 best consoles for JRPGs, but I'll be judging them only based on their catalog, as in what console had the best JRPGs, and how impactful they were in the genre. However, I'll include my top 10 at the end with the consoles ranked based on their retrocompatibility and emulation capabilities, so let's begin! Number 10, the Super Nintendo. I wanted to open with a tie with the Game Boy Advance, but I realized that apart from a few JRPGs like the Fire Emblem titles that I love passionately, there aren't really that many that I can call myself a big fan of. Sadly, the same can be said for the Super Nintendo. I think I was a bigger fan of other games from other genres than its RPGs. Over the past 10 years, however, I've grown to appreciate the genre in the Super Nintendo a lot more. But still, it remains on number 10 for two reasons. One, because it just doesn't have that many JRPGs that I can declare myself a die-hard fan, other than Super Mario RPG, Final Fantasy III, Lufia 2, Chrono Trigger, Breath of Fire, and a few hidden gems here and there. There aren't many other JRPGs that I really liked. And two, because while this system got the quality over quantity philosophy, it also dragged a bunch of mediocre JRPGs that are straight up useless. Some of them did try to lay the basis of the genre and influenced much better titles, but most of that influence comes from the popular JRPGs that I mentioned. Still, a list without the mighty Super Nintendo, which represents that very same influence in the genre, just wouldn't make any sense. It just had to be in the list, but I can't personally rank it higher despite loving it. Number 9, the Nintendo DS. I think this little console had a heck of a lot of shovelware in all kinds of genres, almost at the same level as the Wii. In JRPGs, it is no different, it just has way too many ones that are mediocre or forgettable. But among all that, there's also a lot of gold to be found. I spent a lot of time with the DS, so I can't leave it out of the list no matter what. I'm personally fond of it because I remember trying JRPG after JRPG on it for years. I confessed I struggled a bit to find really good ones on it, which is why I'm ranking it at number 10, but I did. Radiant Historia was a lifesaver for me, a masterpiece that I wasn't expecting on this console at all. I later got into Devil Survivor and suffered through its unbalanced difficulty, but I still ended up adoring it. The DS also had several experiments gone wrong, but also right. A few weird ones that are hard to appreciate, but once you do, you start seeing them in a new light. Rondo of Swords, Covenant of the Plume, Endless Frontier, games like that. It also got, as usual, first-party support with some Mario and Luigi games, but only one Fire Emblem? And it was a remake of the very first Fire Emblem ever? Suikoden got a spin-off called Tear Cries that half the fanbase dissed. Well, it's okay, I liked it anyways. But my point is, as much as I love the Nintendo DS, I don't think it delivered a really solid library in the genre, nor do I think it was impactful for it, historically speaking. Number 8, the PlayStation Vita. The PS Vita will definitely be on the first places of my list if I was judging it for its emulation, but based on its catalog and how good it was to play that very same catalog here, it can't be ranked higher. It's heartbreaking to see how not even its creators supported it, especially after realizing their big mistake. Memory cards were too small for their games, and stupidly enough they were exclusive to it and very expensive. However, the console did have a lot of third-party support and several amazing JRPGs were released for it. Persona 4 Golden got most of its popularity thanks to being an exclusive updated version to the Vita for a long time. Other fantastic ports were there like Odin Sphere, which played really well on the system. Let's not forget about some of the Ys games, Lacrimosa of Dana being yet another wonderful game, and the Vita was actually its first home, believe it or not. Sure, other JRPGs had superior versions on other systems, but the Vita held its ground masterfully with some of them. And let's not forget the insane amount of dungeon crawlers in first person that found it as a great haven. However, the Vita itself didn't do that much for the genre, other than being an awesome house of ports. Barely any exclusives were released for it, and it served a much better purpose later on as an emulation machine. Regardless, it holds a dear place in my heart. Number 7, the 3DS. Being technically an update of the original Nintendo DS, the 3DS got way more first-party support than it. Nintendo themselves realized there was a lot of love for the genre, so they went nuts with several IPs of their own. We saw brand new Mario and Luigi titles, Pokemon games, ports galore of both series, and a bunch of Fire Emblem games still exclusive to the 3DS. Hell, Fire Emblem Awakening saved the franchise from big financial trouble and launched it into the space of success. I also feel it hosted some really cool and unique hidden gems, such as Lord of Magna or Ever Oasis, the latter being a spiritual successor to the legendary Mana series. Atlus went nuts too with this system. Devil Survivor 1 and 2 were brought with rebalanced difficulty, extra episodes, extra characters, becoming pretty much the perfect versions of them. Let's not forget their ports of Strange Journey and Soul Hackers, which was a surprise first release in English overseas. Shin Megami Tensei 4 was so successful it spawned an unexpected sequel of its own called Final, also known as Apocalypse in the West. And I'm not including other original releases for it, or even other ports such as the masterful Radiant Historia. In my eyes, the 3DS was much more meaningful than the DS or even the GBA in terms of JRPGs. Its ports and remasters also helped popularize the trend that is nowadays overly present on modern systems. Number 6, the PSP. I may be a little biased with the PSP, it was such an important part of my personal RPG journey that I can't rank it lower than the 3DS. However, just like the DS, it did have an enormous amount of RPGs that were either forgettable or just plain okay, though it also compiled a serious lot of hidden gems and underrated games. In terms of popularity, however, I think the 3DS beat them both to a pulp. The PSP had just a few mainstream releases with the genre, such as many of the Final Fantasy games. Atlus gave it some love with some juicy Persona ports, but other AAA studios fell short. Namco released a bunch of Tales spin-offs and ports, but most of them remained exclusive to Japan. Sega pulled the same amount of nonsense, especially with Valkyria Chronicles 3. Other than that, the PSP enjoyed many luxuries itself in the obscure realms. Ragnarok Tactics, a personal favorite of mine, was an incredibly overlooked release. Titles such as Growlancer 4 also appeared within its depths, and let's not forget Falcom, who launched a bunch of Legend of Heroes games, including a port of the very first entry in the popular Trails series, Trails in the Sky. Though many of these games stayed in obscurity for many years, the PSP's mainstream success only helped the genre to some extent. Hence why, despite being a massive fanboy, I can't rank it higher than this. But long live the PSP, man. Number 5, the PlayStation 3. I have to say right now that the PS3 is officially underrated. A console many looked down upon at first, but later praised for a short while. It's true that it didn't have the strong JRPG support its predecessors had, but still opened the doors for many phenomenal titles. Some are still nowadays exclusive to it, like Tales of Exilia 1 and 2, such amazing games that played and looked marvelously on the PS3. We also saw the birth of iconic franchises like Nier, Ni no Kuni, and Valkyria Chronicles, which will go on to spawn sequels and commercial success. The best-seller Persona 5 also got a release quite late in this system, just like the remaster of Odin Sphere and the beautiful Eternal Sonata. Several underrated JRPGs just like the latter also found a very welcoming home here, plus you could use the crossplay feature with the PlayStation Vita, especially since several of its JRPGs were simultaneously released here on the PS3. This is also where two quite prolific JRPG series encountered their first true initial success: The Legend of Heroes, with Cold Steel 1 and 2 published for it, and the long-running Atelier series. I'm not sure why people see this system as mediocre in the genre, considering it had dozens of amazing JRPGs released for it. Number 4, the PlayStation 1. Many of you will put this on the first place. Its huge impact on the genre is undeniable. The SNES proved the world the genre was ready to be mainstream, but it only succeeded with a few classics. Along came the PS1 to destroy Nintendo's hope to be a shelter for JRPGs. Sony jealously guarded the insuperable commercial achievement of Final Fantasy VII, VIII, and IX for a very long time. Many monsters in the same realm succeeded graciously from within the headquarters of Squaresoft themselves. Even Enix published a Dragon Quest game that remained exclusive for many years to it. Valkyrie Profile was also one of those releases. The PS1 went on to revolutionize storytelling in video games like never seen before. It spawned over 60 titles released outside of Japan, and who knows how many remained there, unable to see the worldwide light. It's just dumb not to see the historical importance this little system had for the genre, since it clearly paved the way for many other hits out there. My favorite JRPG of all time, Chrono Cross, was born here. But the PS1 is not my number one for two reasons. One, because I didn't live through its launch like many out there, which I still resent nowadays. I am very nostalgic about it, just not in the same way as many of you. And two, because let's face it, half of those so-called classics didn't age very well and had to be either remade or remastered recently. A lot of them are still begging to receive the same treatment one of these days, but we're getting there, people. We're getting there. Number 3, the Switch. This hybrid console is already the one with the most RPGs in history. Even if we leave indies and westerns out, we're still talking about over 100 JRPGs. It will be the perfect console if it wasn't for its technical issues and low resolution. It's a machine you can treat as a home console or a portable system. Not the first one doing it, but the first one greatly succeeding at it. It just got it right, didn't it? Nevertheless, it is because of those same hardware limitations that this simply cannot be ranked higher. Many JRPGs suffered its consequences despite most receiving moderate success. It still has a crap ton of exclusives from Nintendo themselves and some of its current subsidiaries. 2 Fire Emblem titles so far, and a few spin-offs of their own have succeeded in the market. Pokemon hasn't stayed behind with several releases as well. Xenoblade Chronicles quickly became a massive media franchise that's been enjoying critical acclaim worldwide. We've seen strong support from both Square Enix and Atlus too, if at least mostly with several ports with exclusive content to them. But the most impressive thing to mention here is that the Switch still has a few years left, and we already have this many great JRPGs on it. What the Switch has done for the genre is too much to elaborate on, and developers, despite its technical flaws, still keep on releasing their JRPGs on it no matter what. Number 2, the PlayStation 4. I have the same argument with the PS4 as I did with the Switch. Both have popularized JRPGs 10 times than any other system in history. The genre wasn't as mainstream 10 or 20 years ago as it is today, with tons of remakes, remasters, ports, re-releases, but also a vast plethora of brand new JRPGs on both. Crucial entries such as Dragon Quest XI, Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4, Ys 8, Persona 5, Nier Automata are amongst the most popular out there, so this feels like a tie so far. Why then is the PS4 ranked higher on the list? A few number of reasons. The PS4 went dumb with censorship, that's true, so that's a downer, but in technical features, it's just far superior to the Switch. Nearly every single JRPG looks and plays better here. Plus, while the Switch has a few important exclusives of its own, several PS4 JRPGs just aren't on it. Companies thought they just wouldn't look good over there, so they remained on PS4 and other bigger hardwares of its time. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Elden Ring, Code Vein, several Tales games like Berseria and Arise, Dragon's Crown, Odin's Sphere. I honestly don't know why most of these aren't on Switch, but the fact remains that they aren't. Still, the lack of exclusives is worrisome. I think the era of exclusives is crystal clear over, but it was precisely that which helped distinguish a lot of video game systems in the past. Therefore, as much as I love passionately the PS4 or the Switch, I can't handle the crown to either of them. Number 1. The PlayStation 2. If the PS1 reinvented the genre, then the PS2 is the best thing that ever happened to it. The console carried the torch like no other system in history. Not only did it release twice the amount of JRPGs, but also increased quality and variety big time. We saw hardcore beginnings with Final Fantasy X, Shadow Hearts, Xenosaga, and even the birth of the popular Kingdom Hearts series. Later, the massive success of Persona started right here with 3 and 4. Dragon Quest VIII was huge. Namco brought us Tales of the Abyss and Tales of Legendia. Suikoden, Wild Arms, and Grandia continued on, and Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne challenged the world. Obscure and hidden gems galore here. Grow Lancer returned, Eternal Poison came out, Ephemeral... no wait, never mind that. Okage Shadow King, Stella Deus, Steamboat Chronicles, Shining Tears, Crimson Tears, Lapusel Tactics, Soul Nomad, MS Saga, Chaos Wars. Should I go on? This Gaia met its roots right here with the PS2. So did the Dot Hack series and Monster Hunter. In other words, the console was so massive, successful, welcoming, and important that everyone and their mom wanted to develop games for it. So naturally, JRPGs took over as much as they could. Suffice to say, most of them made it overseas and only a handful remained exclusive to Japan. It opened the doors for many series that never would have made it before, like Sakura Wars or even the Atelier games. That's how much it achieved the PlayStation 2. The one that continued pushing the genre over its limits. The one that followed in the PS1's footsteps to make it mainstream. The one that created its own colossal legacy. The true king forevermore of Japanese role-playing games. Anyway, this is how my list would look like if I was considering emulation and retro compatibility. As you can see, the PS4 went down a lot, and the PS Vita went up considerably. PS2 is still the best no matter what. Anyway, thanks for watching everybody, and see you next time!